And hello, welcome to the Mike Sports episode. Here, finally, we're up and running. I'm your host Eric, joined as always by Landry. Landry, how are you?
What's up?
Not too much, man. We got preseason to talk about, and who's been in, who's been out. Obviously, still the holdout in Dallas, the contract demands of Dak Prescott.
Yep.
And, I mean, things are getting kind of crazy out here.
Yeah. And I mean, look, the good news is if we wanted drama, we got some.
Yeah. I mean, it's great news for us because we have plenty to talk about. Otherwise, it's just me and you sitting here and being like, well, preseason happened. Nobody died.
Right. Well, I think we should knock out what's the first drama to knock out? AB says his feet are frozen, and he showed up on a weather balloon, and he says he doesn't want to play football no more because of the helmet rule. Now, obviously, there's been some updates since then, but the one thing we can definitely say is that AB is drama, certified and delivered.
Yeah, and it's funny, we talked about it last week or 2 weeks ago about how you just have to know what you're getting when you get Antonio Brown. And the Steelers definitely knew what they were letting go when they let Antonio Brown go. I mean, granted, he's a fantastic talent, and he may end up, really helping the Oakland Raiders as they transition to the Las Vegas Raiders in a year. But, man, it's not going to come without some headaches. And John Gruden's got to know that, while he may try to embrace it, there's going to be some long nights for him.
Yeah, it was very interesting to see John Gruden basically do the, I support him in the helmet thing. I'm like, of course you do. What else could you say? I don't support the guy that I went out of my way to get, who's creating havoc since the beginning already on my team. John Gruden has the most to lose by AB and him not getting along.
Yeah, he's got to maintain that relationship. That's the only thing he could do is to just go right at the NFL and be like, yeah, we stand behind our player in this. That was the only play for John Gruden.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just one of those. If somebody doesn't, AB is one of those players where I'm kind of like, is it worth it? In my opinion, it's not. AB is not worth the trouble. That's just me. Right. I know people have that. He's one of the best talents in the NFL.
And he's as good as he thinks he is.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No one guy other than a quarterback has ever really dictated whether a team's going to win a Super Bowl, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would say in a vacuum that's true. The quarterback position is the only really position, especially nowadays, that you'd say that is where you win a championship. Is if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have anything. And it's funny, a few years ago when the Eagles made their move to go up and get Carson Wentz, there's a lot of people who thought, hey, you know what, the Eagles are pretty close. They just got to figure out what they're doing at their quarterback position. They had Sam Bradford, who, some people were sold on, some people weren't. And I think the Eagles just said, no, you know what? It may look like we're close in all these other areas, but we don't have a quarterback, so we're not close. And so they just decided they'd do what they had to do to go up and get their quarterback.
Yeah, no doubt. What's cool about the Eagles, speaking of, if anybody can see my background, the money signs and the Cowboys, Dak Prescott reportedly turned down $30 million and is seeking $40 million. Now, that's rumor. Now, what I have to say to that is, number one, Wentz did get, $32 million a year?
Right, yeah.
So Dak seeking $33 million isn't out of the question as far as market value.
No, it would be protocol, yeah.
Right, and I know somewhere inside him he knows, and we all know, Mahomes, when he's due for his contract, is probably going to land somewhere in like 37 to 40 mil.
Yeah.
Right? And I think Dak is almost trying to be like, I don't want to just match this market. I want to match the next 2 to 3 years what the market may be and get that now.
Yeah, and look, I don't blame him right now. He's in a spot of leverage. He can do that because look, they're posturing. he doesn't have to sign a contract right now. Like this doesn't become an issue for until
A year.
February, March when the new league year starts. So this is the perfect time to do this if you're Dak Prescott and you're his representation. They're not holding out. They're not doing anything wrong. They're negotiating. Throw out a high number and you can work back from there.
Yeah, and not only that, it's one of those like, is first of all, you got those people who are like, well, Dak's not worth that. Well, it all depends. Like that's perspective. Is it the player's worth or is it the market value? Well, it's always been the market value that's dictated the quarterbacks. Look at Joe Flacco. When he won the Super Bowl, his value, come on, did we think he was the reason they won a Super Bowl? No, but he still got market value for going to the Super Bowl and being a quarterback. But
yeah, and that's the thing. He's the guy I'll always look to when people say, well, that guy's not worth this. Well, Joe Flacco went and won a Super Bowl, and he got himself paid off of being a Super Bowl winner. Now, and I know this isn't going to be too popular in my backyard, but who would you take, Joe Flacco at that time even, or Dak Prescott right now? I'll take Dak Prescott.
Yeah, and look, here's the deal. Prescott, I don't think Prescott's better than Wentz per se as being like a player versus a player. Right. But Dak's
– no, but he's next up. He's got to be –
Dak's stats are better. And Dak is going into a meeting going, look, you may think I'm not as good as Wentz, but my stats say I am.
And that's a smart move by him.
Of course. Of course. But my thing with that is, well, a lot of people are like, Zeke. No, actually, if you look at when Zeke was suspended, Dak did, he did pretty good without Zeke, actually. And when Zeke came back, he didn't do any better. When Amari Cooper got added, all of a sudden his stats blew up. So people who are all about
you got your guy a top tier receiver, and
all these people who are all about Zeke, I think they got it wrong. Zeke has not actually made Dak a better quarterback. They might, with Amari Cooper in there, Zeke can then become a decoy to make that wide receiver.
Would you, by contrary, say that instead of saying Zeke has made Dak better, would you say Dak and Amari Cooper have made Zeke better?
Yeah. Well, I would definitely say Amari Cooper has made Dak better, and I would say Zeke makes Amari and Dak better. But only with the star wide receiver does Zeke become, to me, the right kind of catalyst in there. Otherwise, he's like we talked about one of our previous segments where he is he's a DeMarco Murray,
Right, yeah. And DeMarco Murray, while he had a great year in Dallas when he won the rushing title, helped me win a fantasy football championship too, which I know everybody's very concerned about.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that team didn't do anything. That was the team that lost in Green Bay, right? In the division.
Yeah. I mean, that's why a lot of people freaked out. They're like, why would you break this chemistry up? Look how far you got, Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. Like, preseason has set some tones here, right? We know Zeke is kind of like, I want to be paid now because I probably won't get paid later if I don't fight for it now. That's his argument. In my opinion, like you've already heard me say,
he's not wrong.
I'm okay with if we feel the need to trade Zeke. I'm okay with it. Do I think that'll happen? No, because Jerry Jones is a businessman. He will find a way to get the deals done in the end.
Yeah, I'd say you're probably right. They'll figure it out.
Yeah.
For all the the knocking that Jerry Jones takes, especially in this area, in Northeast Philadelphia, like he's a smart businessman, and he's not going to get outdone in the art of the deal.
He's not. And what drives me crazy is I'm like, Zeke, you're not arguing with the GM, you're arguing with the freaking owner, dude.
Yeah, and
like it's a different concept dealing with Jerry Jones. Yeah,
Jerry Jones is worth billions with a B, and he didn't get there by accident.
Yeah, exactly. And I was watching Hard Knocks the other day, 2008 Cowboys Hard Knocks.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry Jones makes a good freaking point at the beginning of the episode. He goes, I could be doing anything else in the world I want to be doing because the dude's worth X amount of billions.
Yeah.
He's like, I choose to be here with the Dallas Cowboys. And so that should tell you that this dude could be on a yacht with a Russian ballerina team and not give two splits about what's going on until football season starts.
Oh, yeah.
This dude is there.
He could sell the Dallas Cowboys tomorrow and be worth $1 trillion and just sit on his rear end until his time's up.
Yeah.
But he loves being a part of the NFL. He loves being an owner. And he loves being the owner of the Dallas Cowboys. And as an Eagles fan, I love the sideshow it gives us.
Yeah, and one of the things he says there, he goes, I don't know about y'all, but I love being on Broadway. It's one of the things he says in that same statement. This guy was born to take something to make it better. I mean, that's just the way he is.
Yep.
Yeah, and he's one of the.
He's been great for football.
Yeah, no doubt. And the other thing with it is, to me, is, when I look at this preseason and I'm looking at Antonio Brown and whatnot, one of the things that made me say is, who are the most overrated players right now that we have in the league that are, fighting for new contracts or whatnot?
Right.
And I said it 4 or 5 years ago, whatever. I always thought Winston was just completely overrated. I don't know what people saw in him. I just never felt like Winston was like the guy. He was one of my bust predictions, and he's starting to get that way.
Yeah, and Tampa, they have not done a deal for him, and he's in a make it or break it year for the Bucs. This is going to decide a lot for him, what his future is going to be, and where the Bucs as an organization are going to be over the course of the next 3 years. Because you got to think, dude, if you're saying no to this quarterback, you're probably saying now no to this coaching staff, no to this GM. You're like, when you say you're done with a quarterback, nowadays it means you're done with the entire regime.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Winston, when I saw him do the chicken licking finger thing, I was kind of like, this guy is just not.
He doesn't get it.
He's not a bad person. He's just, to me, not all there. He's just not. Mm-hmm. And he can do X's and O's. He's been doing them his whole life, and he's athletically talented. But I think when you use the keyword leadership, I don't see it.
And your quarterback's got to be the face of your franchise.
Yeah, bad or good. I mean, bad or good. You got to be able to take, both.
Right. You've got to be able to be the guy who stands up there at the podium and answers it when things go bad. Like, I look at it, taking a different sport for example, the Philadelphia 76ers, they lost a game in the Eastern Conference semifinals against Toronto. And at the end of the game, it was a bad loss, and Joel Embiid knew he had to go up there and do his press conference, and he kind of did this whole, all right, I guess I'm going up there by myself. And not that like he was complaining about it, but he knew he had to go do it. And Jimmy Butler comes to him and says, "Nah, dude, I'll go with you." And the two of them went to the podium to answer questions about what happened. And to me, it's like, where is Jameis Winston looking at, say another player makes a terrible mistake in one of the games and saying, you know what, buddy, I'll go with you. We'll address this together.
Right. Well, preseason's weird to me, right? Because number one, as much as I love football, I find preseason kind of boring, even though I'm dying to watch football.
Yeah.
I feel like the first 20 minutes, I'm like, yeah, football. And then I'm like, all the star players aren't playing until regular season. Which brings me to another point is, we're starting to have that whole, like, well, why even put them in and risk injury now? We're starting to have the NBA effect, like, rest them. And I'm kind of like, okay, so really we're just doing tryouts for the guys who are trying out. And granted, they need the time if you've watched Hard Knocks. But I'm also sitting there going, I really just don't feel like preseason needs to be what it is anymore. It needs to change. It needs to shorten up and extend the season like we talked about.
Yeah, I think that's becoming very obvious. And to me, there's no doubt that they're going to go to at least just the 2 preseason games and 2 more regular seasons, if not just eliminate the preseason entirely. And to me, if you would eliminate the preseason entirely, it would be to go to more joint practices, maybe a longer training camp, just to give guys chances to make teams, like to placate, because those back end of the roster guys, those are going to be the guys that are saying, hey, dude, we got to fight for roster spots. We need those games. And if they're saying, well, we're going to give you more joint team practices. So you're still going to kind of get those preseason games, but we're not going to put them on TV. We're not going to put them in your stadium. Like, you're going to put them on a practice field, and you guys are going to practice together, and which is going to be able to include a lot of 11 on 11, which means a lot of, back end of the roster guys competing for roster spots where they should be in practices and joint practices, as opposed to putting them out there on TV. Like, because you and I were suckers for this. Like, we're gonna watch. If you put football on TV, like, I'm gonna tune in and I'm gonna watch it, and they're gonna try to charge me full price. Like, I've got 2 tickets to the Eagles-Ravens preseason game. You would think I could walk in anywhere and give them away to anybody? Nobody's paying me anything. And I'll tell you what, though, the Eagles didn't miss a chance. They charged us every last penny that they charged.
Yeah.
The same amount the Eagles Cowboys in December. That's how much I have to pay for Eagles Ravens in August.
Yeah. I totally agree. And here's the other thing. So I heard a suggestion of, okay, they should have just more joint practices and less preseason. Well, then you got the Aaron Rodgers of the world who are being dramatic about it, saying that gives them a chance to see what I do. I don't want that before the season. I don't want them to see my audibles. I don't want them to see, and that's what I'm saying. There's a debate for everything. I can kind of see his point.
Well, he doesn't have to
a little bit of a baby
practices if you don't want.
But I mean, it's still a point.
He doesn't practices if he doesn't want. And the coaches could decide not to have him participate, because really those joint practices.
How about you schedule teams you're probably not going to play or that are out of your conference only for those. So at least it's not, people in your, you know what I mean? It's kind of like for every argument, there's got to be a solution.
If you are playing them, it's not until the Super Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah. But I get his point. I mean, I think that's a pretty valid point, saying, hey, look, when we do joint practices, they're getting an early preview of what we plan to do and what we're running. I don't want that.
Well, you can slate it just like you do preseason games where you're not showing anybody anything.
Yeah. Well, I think, joint practices, I can't remember. Aren't they typically they're not heavy hitting and stuff like that?
No.
So I think what he's saying is, since we're not going to do heavy hitting, I'd like to get in and get some reps since I don't have to worry about injury. But I don't want to get in and get reps if they're going to see shit. And I think dynamic. I mean, you're right. If they did it just like they do preseason, well, then sure. But if Rodgers is like, hey, if we're not going to be hitting, I'd like to get some reps in. But at the same time, that reveals some of our stuff. So,
Yeah. And that's where I think you'd have to then you get one or the other, man. Like,
yeah, no, I hear you. I think some people are just kind of like, they got Rodgers fatigue right now. Like, you and your drama and your coach.
That guy talking, yeah.
I can't remember what the stat was. I think it was they had a stat like the best teams are going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Let me bring it up. Let me see if I can bring it up. Hold on. Look behind me.
All-time teams, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's see. I'll read it since I'm kind of blocking a few out here. But I'm curious what you think about this list, because when we're talking about Rodgers and best quarterbacks and stuff like that, I was like, okay, well, let's talk about elite teams. So number 1 is the 1985 Bears. Number 2, the 1984 49ers, and number 3, 1962 Packers. And I think you can see the rest behind me.
I can see, the 89 Niners, of course, the 72 Dolphins.
Yeah, and over here you got 91 Redskins, Thick Pin, 94 49ers, 95. Notice my Cowboys didn't even make the list, by the way.
Yeah, I was really curious by that. And I was about to say, man, think about this. An Eagles fan is about to come to the defense of the Dallas Cowboys. How could that 92 Cowboys team? I mean, I'm sorry, I've watched football for a long time.
Yeah,
that team was pretty damn good.
Yeah, I would go with the 95 or not 95 because I think that's the 95 Cowboys were to me the best team. Not out of all these teams, they were the best team to me that should have made the list. I'm not a real big fan.
I can make the argument that team somehow found a way to win it with Barry Switzer as their coach. That
exactly.
is better.
Yeah, I mean, unless you want to go to 93. I mean, the 93 Cowboys might have been better than 95. They were fully loaded. They had the right coaching and everything.
Yeah, I
But
know
to
the
me,
last
what's
year of
funny
Jimmy
is
Johnson.
the 94 Cowboys to me were the best. They should have beat the Niners. They just didn't play the best game that day.
Well, the Niners jumped out to a 21-0 lead.
Yeah,
Like
that's what I'm
before
saying. I think we went
and
in a little shell shocked. And then we started playing catch up, but it just wasn't quite enough by the end of the game. But I do think the 94 Cowboys were better to me than the 93 Cowboys. We just happened to run into a team that decided not to underestimate us and come out flying on us with Ricky Waters and Ken Norton Jr. I mean, they had some killers on there that was like their only year that they really ever went into the zone.
Right, yeah, that was the best Ricky Waters because then he found a way to get paid coming to Philadelphia. And, really, that was kind of the end of Ricky Waters.
Yeah. I think it's one of those, like, I think it all depends how you really want to look at things, right? I mean, I'm starting to, it feels like, to me at least, that we're running into like this weird, like, nostalgia moment where like we can't really let this new era get too far on us. It's like you got these guys that like are kind of like, Mahomes that. And I think what's happening is you're getting that Rodgers versus Mahomes syndrome going on now. And people are really having a hard time going, Mahomes just seems better. But Rodgers is your typical proto quarterback who, he just hasn't been given the right tools to win a Super Bowl. I'm like, okay, well, which is it? Is it you need to be as good as Mahomes and you don't have all those weapons, but you can get closer? Or is it you need to be as good as Rodgers and like Rodgers, and it doesn't matter about your weapons if you have a solid team, not a superstar team? I mean, Mahomes doesn't have anything crazy except for Hunt and Reed, really. So what's Rodgers' excuse? He had years to get something.
Yeah, it's funny because I almost call it the Michael Jordan, LeBron James syndrome, where, us being of the, 80s kids, grew up as, we worship at the altar that Michael Jordan's the greatest basketball player of all time.
Yeah.
And, it's hard to fathom the idea that somebody like even a LeBron James could challenge that.
Right.
And so it does present a unique viewpoint. Now, like you look at now, Aaron Rodgers is the guy that's kind of taken over, or even going back to the Brady Montana thing. How long even I was one of those guys who held out and said, no, Montana number 1, Brady number 2.
Yeah.
And, and I think it's that whole nostalgia, that holding on to, no, my guy from my era that I grew up with has to be better than the guy playing right now.
Yeah, and it wasn't for me. It wasn't until the comeback against the Falcons I was kind of like, dude, this is done. This is freaking done.
I remember sitting in my living room. A couple of my friends from work had come over to watch that Super Bowl, and they like when it was 28-3. One of them was just like, I think I'm gonna get ready to go. And I looked over and I said, man, all I can say is that Tom Brady, he's a bad man.
Yeah. What else we got going on in preseason? Let's see. We got the Rodgers drama. We got the Antonio Brown drama.
Guys playing? Do you think the bubble wrap approach, or would you be one of those that would like to see guys get some more action?
Are you talking about the stars, or are you talking about like the guys that are trying to make a place on the team?
The stars, like, Carson Wentz, he may not play. There's a debate right now whether or not Carson should play at all in the preseason.
Yeah, my whole deal is, look, these are professional players.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we were talking college, I'd be like, look, they need reps. They need to warm up into the season. But these are professional players, and I think now that we're cutting back on practices with pads and stuff like that, I think the fourth game is probably a good time to put your guys in for a half going into the season. But I think kind of past that, I'm not real like, oh, man, they got to play or whatnot.
Right.
These are professionals. This is their craft. They live to do what they do if they're a starting first stringer. I mean, as well as I do that, one thing I respected last year, I don't know if you remember, where Dak won his last game against the Giants when we didn't even need it.
Right.
And I respect that. See, I'm different at the end of the season. I want you playing in every game, even if we're going to the playoffs guaranteed. I still want you playing a full game of football to win. I want that consistent competitive spirit. I don't want to drop off in that.
See, and I like that approach. I'll cite a different example. A few years ago, and actually, different Eagles coach, Chip Kelly, was there, and the Eagles and Cowboys were competing for the division title. They were going to play the last game of the season, and the Cowboys have played. This is the second to last week. This is week 16. The Eagles are playing the Bears on Sunday Night Football. The Cowboys are playing earlier in the day against the Redskins. Now, if the Cowboys had won, then, which they did, then the game between the Eagles and Bears essentially didn't mean anything because the Eagles still had to beat the Cowboys to win the division. And so a lot of people thought, well, the Eagles should rest some of their starters. And Chip Kelly didn't do that. He played everybody. They played the whole game, and the Eagles ended up winning. They stomped the Chicago Bears that night. And when asked about it, Chip Kelly gave like kind of a next level answer. He's like, okay. He's like, well, think about this. What if we go into Dallas next week and we have a tie in Dallas? He's like, and then we gave away a game here tonight, when we could have won, and that tie means we win the division.
Right.
Like, so, you got to think like it's all thinking that next level. And whether it be sharpness, like you want to keep guys sharp, like at the end of the season, because you're playing a whole season, and guys, like I just agree, you got to stay in that moment when you haven't put it in there for real, when you haven't, gotten out there for live bullets. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking it easy, like in the preseason, saying, you know what, I don't need you guys right now. You guys are training, you're practicing every day, you're working your tails off. Carson Wentz goes out there in the first half and throws 3 touchdowns. It's not going to change whether or not Carson Wentz is our starting quarterback. Dak Prescott goes out there and throws for 300 yards in the first half in a meaningless preseason game against the Texans. It going to change your opinion on what you think of Dak Prescott? Probably not, right? So I just think there's nothing to be gained by throwing him out there. There's only stuff that can be lost. Like Andrew Luck, suffered an injury again, and that poor guy. People call Carson Wentz injury prone, for suffering 2 injuries. Yeah, Andrew Luck, man, that poor guy can't. There must be a pun in that last name because he can't catch a break. He's got some bad luck.
Yeah. I don't know. So right now, like, what would you grade this preseason? Like, when you look at the preseason, are you kind of like, it's all right, it's not much going on? Or are you kind of like, no, we're seeing some good stuff, we're getting some good information on players and drama?
I'd say there's not much positive I can say about this preseason. Nobody's really playing, and those that did, Andrew Luck gets hurt. I think I'm more and more going along with what you always said is, man, just wake me up when the regular season gets here. And I remember the first time you said that to me, like 4 or 5 years ago, I was like, it's football, dude. Like,
I know. You still must be offended. You're like, what, dude, what are you talking about? Football. Yeah. And I'm like, not really, not when the Stars weren't playing.
And then it's funny because then the next time I watch, I remember I put it on, I went, man, Jake's so out of his mind. I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
Yeah.
Like 10 minutes into the game, this is boring.
You know what it feels like to me, dude? Regular season feels like an NBA game where no one can dunk. That's what it feels like to me. I'm kind of like, I can't get anything like majorly exciting. I can only get mediocre 3-yard plays with an occasional. A guy slipped up, but I'm like, he's a DB that's going to get cut because he's not that good, and he blew his coverage, and the guy scored. I'm like, it just doesn't feel like there's they fought down tooth and nail and for that end zone and that ball. It feels like an NBA game where no one can dunk.
That's a great analogy. I'm going to use that. I'm going to blatantly rip that off somewhere.
Yeah, just say, all rights reserved to Landry somewhere in there.
All right, I'll make sure to mix that in.
It's cool. So my background right now has Carson Wentz and Dak.
Yes,
and you look like you're the head of Carson Wentz.
I love it.
And it looks like it says Eagles right above number 11 twice.
That's right, Eagles.
So, okay. Prediction on Carson Wentz. We're getting closer. What are we in week? We're going to be in week 3 of preseason?
This is week 2.
Yeah, we're in week 2, but we're going into – are we in week 2?
Yes, this is this is the second preseason game
because it started on Thursday
because
night.
the Hall of Fame game.
Yeah, and that always gets me mixed up. When we start a game on Thursday night, I don't consider that the week of. I consider that the week before because it's not Friday.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But in the NFL,
right? Yeah, because you're still in that work week.
Yeah, in the NFL, that's the week. That's the week coming up. Yeah. That's
one of the funniest things. I'll just give a quick story. I love watching Red Zone whenever the Eagles aren't on, and so like the Eagles played the Carolina Panthers back in 2017 on a Thursday night and won, and it was a tremendous game. Found a way to win, and so then I turn on Red Zone on Sunday, and I'm just they're getting ready to have whatever games, and the guy goes, he's like, "How'd you like to be an Eagles fan right now? You're sitting there, your team's already won this week. You're like 4-1," and I just look at him like, this guy gets me. This guy knows me.
Well,
but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I mean, I wasn't going to take away from what you're saying. It's for me, I'm disappointed by preseason as usual.
Yeah,
which is why I'm kind of like, man, can we just shorten this crap already? Can we use practice squad time for you to evaluate your players?
Right.
Can we just extend? I'd rather have 2 more regular season games than 2 more preseason games. So I'm like, can we get to like football where it counts, where when I watch a game, I know it's going to matter somewhere? And I think that's my problem is as much as I like watching football, I want to know what matters. That's what keeps my interest.
Tomorrow night, when I put on the Eagles game, I'm going to sit here and Eagles-Jaguars, and Nick Foles isn't playing, and so I'm disappointed in that.
Yeah.
But it's like, if the Eagles win tomorrow, like, I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, somebody says.
Yeah, remember one season where the Patriots went 0-4. Well, they won the Super Bowl that season.
You're right.
It's like,
and
is not an indicator.
In just in case anybody's curious, tomorrow's my birthday. So the Eagles play on my birthday, and that happens sometimes in the preseason. My mom says
early birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
It's recorded, so I cannot be that shitty friend that didn't tell you happy birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And so my mom says to me, she's like, "Oh, aren't you excited, Eric? The Eagles won on your birthday." And I said, "I don't care." And I said to my mom, like, I want them to win on your birthday. My mom's birthday is February 1st. So
okay. All right.
Yeah.
So for the record, so people who are out there, Eric is going to be 17 years old.
Exactly. Yeah. Still a teenager. Keeping it real.
He's 17. He can't drink. He can't own a firearm, I think. I don't know what Philly's rules are. But
in Texas, isn't it like mandatory I get handed a firearm?
Yeah, or something like, you're in Philly. I mean, you're supposed to be one of those patriarch cities. But you got some gangs up there. You better be strapped.
Well, you come down some of these streets.
Yeah. I mean, where I live, it's like safe. There's picket fences. We water our lawn. The Cowboys win the Super Bowl every year where I live. It's called Magical
Land. Your Madden World?
Yeah, it's called Magical Land. And only certain people are allowed in there. You have to be delusional, on drugs, or some kind of pharmaceutical. So it's kind of like the Raiders used to be. Yeah, it's kind of like the Oakland, or it's kind of like the Raiders used to be. If you don't have a criminal record, you cannot play on this team.
If you don't have a criminal record, don't worry, one will be provided for you.
Nice. I don't know. I'm so curious, like the culture of the Raiders when they hit Las Vegas. I'm curious if they get more like chillaxed or they get more crude.
It's funny. I could just see them, the reputation of the Raiders being this like hardcore, like gangster or like, cheat.
I don't see it in Las Vegas.
Like, they'll go there and they'll be this like straight lace. It'll be like,
I was talking to someone about this. The Raiders should take this season to redo their logo, like going to Vegas with like a whole new feeling, shake off the old rust, and go in there and just kind of give yourself a new brand. Preseason to me is a perfect example of that. And when you've been watching these preseason games, I haven't really paid attention. Have you seen any problems with the new rule? The new.
I know that there was one game where they where a pass interference was called via replay, and now I'm trying to remember which game it was. I just caught the highlight on SportsCenter. I want to say it was like It was either Tampa or Carolina was in the game.
I haven't seen any. I've watched most of the games. I mean,
it wasn't a bad call. It was actually the right call, and it was inside of 2 minutes. They didn't challenge it, so it was inside of 2 minutes, and the official came down and reviewed it.
Now, what about I was talking to a friend about it today. What about the rule? It's not implemented, but it's something that's certainly still thought about, removing the kickoff. What do you think about that? I've seen players for and against it.
Like, this is what I think the preseason is for. Like, try something like that out and just to see how the reaction is. And so, would you, I guess, say either the team automatically starts off 1st and 10 at their own 25, or do you run a situation where it's like, say, the team that scored then gets the ball 4th and 15 or whatever from their own 35, and they have to either punt, which they probably would, or they can choose to go for it if they were down, in the 4th quarter.
And me, I'm all about if you can hold on to tradition, go for it. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. 2-minute rule, chunk stupid traditions.
I know how much you love.
For some reason, I can't get behind the kickoff. It's too big of an element to the game. Right.
Because whenever I describe it to anybody, when I'm just like, oh man, I can't wait, man. Kickoff's at 1:00. That's how I describe it. That's how big it is. It's integral to the
I didn't even think about that. I didn't even think about the word kickoff. I didn't even think about it. That makes it even worse.
You're right. What are we gonna say? First snaps at 1:00?
Yeah, the first drive. Chips and queso. It's I don't know. I never even thought about that perspective of it's even in the language and the lingo of talking about the game.
Right.
Kickoff, tailgating, kickoff, all that stuff. I never even thought about it.
We got 30 minutes to kick off. We got to get in there.
Yeah.
I
don't know. It's a good point. That's an excellent point.
It's like taking the face off out of hockey or something
Yeah. Do you think well, I guess it doesn't matter, but what about punting? What if they remove punting?
Well, I don't know what you would do.
You have to go for it on 4th every time? Or there's an automatic reset at a certain point. That's what I said. I think it's going to be really interesting.
I guess you could elect to let them have the ball, what would you say, 40 yards down the field from where you have it.
Yeah.
Or you can choose to.
Or whatever, you take the average punt and you make it a whole number. So let's say the average punt is 43, right. You make it 40 yards. The average punt is 37 yards and you make it 40. Or the average punt is, 34 and a half. Well, then you make it 30. You want to do something like that. But
Right.
The only other controversy I can think of that's going on right now is the helmet thing.
Yeah, which, to me, it's it's a pretty clear rule. They have it in place for player protection, and I'm all about keeping players safe. What I'd like to see them be able to do is be able to do more with a helmet. I feel like technology's advanced to where we should be able to have it to where they have 2 helmets that they could have so that teams could use throwback jerseys more and have, the alternate helmet.
Right.
So I just feel it's one of those, and I hate to always do this, but I always say, guys, once upon a time, we put a man on the moon. We can't come up with a way where we can safely have 2 helmets.
Yeah, the helmet thing kind of baffles me because, number one, if I read correctly, every player had 5 years notice that this change was coming. So that's why Antonio Brown I'm like, get out of here, dude. You're ridiculous at this point. And then at the other end of it, it's kind of like when Brady, the one player that probably is the most powerful in the league at this point, is I don't like it, but I'm adjusting. I'm just gonna have to go with it. What choice do I have? Who are you as a receiver who you're at the end of your career and people already question your character? What do we care if you say you're gonna quit?
Yeah, see you bye. somehow the league survived Calvin Johnson hanging it up early, and that guy honestly was a model citizen,
right?
And was a awesome receiver. The NFL survived him retiring early. If you retire Antonio Brown, next man up.
I have lost. I just, in my opinion, this preseason I've lost a lot of respect for Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
The way he attacked Juju Schuster, the way he attacked the Steelers, even though he's on a new team, it's like he couldn't move on. The frozen foot, the arriving in the air balloon only to announce that he has frozen feet. I'm like, and then the helmet thing. It's like the guy, it's one of those things where, okay, is he attracting attention to himself, or is he just this type of personality that he steps on his own feet constantly but doesn't care because he already has enough money, so he doesn't care?
I think it's maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I think he just looks at it like he loves attention. He loves to be that wild, outspoken. Like he probably looks at it as him being fun-loving and enjoying the perks of his life. When really, to me, it just comes across as childish, and you don't appreciate how fortunate you are to be a grown man playing a kid's game for a living.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. I mean, I forgot. I think he got offered $30 million, right? You know what he was making a year almost. I'm kind of like, go ahead, don't put the helmet on, quit, forfeit $30 million.
Yeah, if he does that, dude, he's out that money. He's got to give that money back to the Raiders. I mean, okay, buddy. Like,
yeah,
I know you've got a ton of money.
I think it was Chris Carter. When I heard Chris Carter talking about it, Chris Carter's like, he'll be at camp. He will be there to play football. No one has children and lives the lifestyle he is and is going to say, I don't care about $30 million. Nobody. And Chris Carter's like, They are divas. Part of that diva mentality is the money they get that gives them the ability to act like that. I like Chris Carter had a really good, strong, to me, impression about wide receivers. He was okay with calling them out, being that he was one, that he was like one at one time, and he was very okay with it. And, when I look at Antonio Brown, I just see somebody that's like a distraction in my locker room that I don't want there.
Yeah, and I get it. I felt that way after I saw him release the video from the locker room of the Steelers when Mike Tomlin's giving a speech to all of them. It's like time and a place, man. You got to know you're not like that's supposed to be a message meant for you, meant for the Steelers.
Yeah.
Meant for
I think
your locker
people get confused like when they talk about this stuff because you see the Baker Mayfields who are being successful and being themselves and not going to take out for anybody and are just going to keep going. My problem with Antonio Brown is not that he's being himself, it's that he feels the need to attack others while doing so. That bothers me about him. Baker Mayfield's like, dude, leave me alone. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to drink beer at the freaking Cincinnati game and do what I want. And if you don't like it, screw off. But he's not going at the same time. My players suck. My receivers suck.
He's not like calling out Odell Beckham or or Jarvis Landry. Or anybody like that. He's not calling out anybody saying, oh, they got to do better. Yada. He's just saying, dude, he goes and does his thing. He has a good time. He's confident. He believes in his team and he believes in his own abilities. And I don't have a problem with that. And if Antonio Brown was just coming out there saying, hey, I believe I can, have 2,000 yards receiving this year, I wouldn't have a problem with him saying that and being like, I'm going to do the work to back it up.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things we should talk about, we should close the show on the subject of Freddie Kitchens. Like, what do we think this guy is going to be? Did preseason teach us anything about his team and their ethic and the fight? Or do we think he's going to end up being the reason they become a dumpster fire because they just didn't go get a legit head coach?
Right. Look, I don't know about Kitchens yet. I've been doing my best to reserve judgment. I thought that it would be best, considering what you were trying to do there in Cleveland, to get an established head coach, somebody who has sort of been there before to help show this team, a young team that's very talented, and show them how to get to that next level. And look, they decided to go the route of they wanted a young coach who's going to kind of develop with them. And maybe it'll work, but to me, I would have gone the other way.
Yeah. Totally agree. Like I'm like you. I'm not going to pass judgment yet. I want to see him at least 5 to 6 games in, so I can go, okay, man, your team looks like they're not doing near as well as they did last year. Yet they have more talent. Something's being mismanaged here, et cetera, et cetera. At the same time, I think every coach deserves
this team out of it. Yeah,
and I think every coach deserves it at least a year under their belt for me to go, okay, you don't know what you're doing, and if you're going into the second season, you're 0-6. I'm like, you got to go. You just don't got it. This isn't a fit for you. Kind of thing. I just think a lot of people are like, he's going to be the reason they're going to lose and whatnot. I'm like, dude, we won with Barry Switzer. He inherited a talented team. He didn't have to do much.
Yeah, right. If ever there was a way.
So I'm like, Freddie's inheriting a pretty freaking talented team.
Yeah.
Right? So it's
that's the main reason why we talked about it earlier. When you talk about why, what Cowboys teams were the best Cowboys teams, of that run, that 95 team should get a lot more credit because they found a way to win with Barry freaking Switzer as their coach.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is I think Freddie has the respect of the players because Baker backs him up. And as long as Baker is confident in him, everybody else will follow. Because Baker's obviously the leader of this football team at this point.
And look, as long as he has Baker's support, that's probably going to give Kitchens a lot of leeway.
Yeah.
Because that team, they look at it and they know, man, they have not had success in a long time. And this quarterback is their best chance to get success. So we better do everything we can to keep him happy.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's all I got on preseason so far.
Yeah. Well, before we get out of here, I just want to do a quick plug for the whole Phillyverse network, as we're in partnership, or at least cordial agreement with the Football Smack Talk show. Join us on Monday nights, and
and tell people, how do they get to Phillyverse?
Yeah, it's there's a website coming. It should be out within the next week before we go to the air again. The Phillyverse it'll be phillyverse.com, and I'll put a whole link out there.
We'll put a link in the description of the YouTube video below. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we're going to be, hopefully we're going to get linked up with them. And, it's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on, Obviously, you being a Cowboy guy, but you're, as I've always described you, you're the realist. You're not just one of those, drink the Kool-Aid.
I'm the pragmatist.
Yeah. So we have a lot of fun with that. And so, Monday nights, we've got Football Smack Talk show. Tuesday nights, it's the Brocast with Ryan and Ryan. And, of course, Wednesday night right here on YouTube, me and you, conquering the world of football.
One Cowboy and Eagle at a time.
And then Thursday nights, we have Tables, Ladders, and Chairs podcast where I conquer all things wrestling along with my buddy Joe. So,
so basically, and for those who don't know what Eric's putting forward there is, Phillyverse is it's a hub that links you into a lot of shows. So when we put a link below, check it out, see if you see something you like. It's going to be an ever evolving, I think, media platform. So if you don't see something you like, revisit it at some point and see if it has a show, or drop your recommendations to them of a type of show you'd like to see. And someone like Eric or Landry here, we'll figure out a way to see if we can get people together to make it happen.
Yeah, thanks. That's all I got, guys. Good night and happy football. Guys, we're getting close, man. We are getting close.
Get your beer out.
We have got 22 days to go till football.
Till people not sitting on the bench and actually playing football.
Yeah, till we actually see Aaron Rodgers playing football.
Yeah.
We actually see Mitchell Trubisky playing football.
Yeah.
We see the starters playing.
And you get to see licking fingers and everything. Peace.